Greetings. Welcome back to Lantern Bridge. For the third time, we have the fantastic Nikolas Schreck back. In the past, we discussed the Church of Satan, the Temple of Set, those things that he's moved beyond decades ago. So I want to dig into why he left the occult behind, what some people call the Western left-hand path, which we're going to go into what he has found is the real, the authentic, the original traditional left-hand path, which is through Tantric Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, and go from there, I guess. Nikolas, welcome back. And, just for viewers who aren't even familiar with these terms, what's all the fuss about? What is left-hand path and what's been going on in modern occultism using that term?
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for inviting me back to Lantern Bridge. I appreciate it. As I've said many times, and in the book Demons of the Flesh, which came out in 2002, makes crystal clear exactly what is meant. I have to preface answering your question, what is the true left-hand path? What is the fuss about the etymological meaning of left-hand path? Most people who are dedicated to this entirely false, newly invented pseudo tradition that is called the Western left-hand path, which I want to point out is a completely meaningless and ridiculous phrase that has no meaning. It's just like postmodern gobbledygook. It's like saying, I think algebra means flower arrangement, and I've decided that it does, so that's what I think the word algebra means. It is not worthy of respect. It is not worthy of consideration. It is totally false. And in saying that, and then I'll explain why it is, I know from bitter experience with Satanists, occultists, even people in the Christian right who want to demonize the Western left-hand path. They don't care, and most people today do not care about what is true. They do not care what facts are. They do not care what words mean. So I am throwing pearls before swine, as somebody once said, in even addressing it, because it takes 15 minutes of research to discover the left-hand path, which is translated from the Sanskrit phrase Vama Marga, left way, left-hand path. It only has any meaning in the Tantric tradition of India, the Vama Marga, which is the Shaktiite Tantric tradition, or in the Vajrayana, the Tibetan Buddhist, or again, really Indian Buddhism. It only has any meaning in terms of Tantra, in terms of the entire pan-Indian, Himalayan lineage of ancient Eastern mysticism. And it only has meaning in the context of understanding what the right-hand path is. There's the right-hand path and the left-hand path. They are not enemy systems. The way that Western occultists and Satanists treat it like the right-hand path is the way of, collective sheep thinking and, Christianity and all of the religions they hate, and then they think there's this other tradition of individualism and honoring the self and I'm a deity, which they think is falsely is the left-hand path. In the true meaning of the word, which you can look it up if you know how to do 15 minutes of research into any subject, which I know, again, from bitter experience, most people today do not. But don't take it from me. I didn't invent this. This is an ancient tradition. So the left-hand path and the right-hand path are intrinsically part of the same tradition in what you could a little bit wrongly say Hinduism, Buddhism, and even Jainism. These three Eastern religions are, the meaning of it. Now, Vama, left, in Sanskrit is a very poetic language, and one word can have several different meanings that has many subtle gradation. So Vama is the Indo-European root of the word fem. Feminine comes from vam to fem, feminine. And that is crucial to what we'll be talking about today, because ultimately the left-hand path venerates the feminine wisdom, which intrinsically in Tantric Buddhism, in Vajrayana, is equivalent with sunyata, which means emptiness and wisdom, which I'll try to explain briefly a bit later. So the left-hand path is the way of woman, is another way to translate it. It is involved with the veneration of the feminine principle, especially as it embodies the divine nature of wisdom, of emptiness, which is the core of understanding Vajrayana Buddhism. Also, in Shaktism, the Indian left-hand path, which I was involved with for years before I took refuge in Vajrayana Buddhism, that is the Tantra that came out of India, and the worship of Kali, Shakti, the feminine force. That too, the left-hand path, those phrases are used in those systems. Also, Jainism, which is a lesser known of the three major Eastern religions, also has a right and left-hand path. So the left-hand path, and if you're not doing any kind of meditative practice, if you're not doing any kind of sadhanas that are involving the gods or goddesses of Eastern religions, it doesn't have any meaning. So also Vama means left, literally the sinister, not sinister in terms of evil, which is a problem that Madame Blavatsky, who I will get into, led to this misunderstanding. Her arrogant ignorance and her, if ever there was a example of a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, it is Madame Blavatsky, who understood a little about Indian mysticism and totally misinterpreted it. And from her misinterpretation, the Golden Dawn, who were very influenced by her, and then Crowley, who was influenced by the Golden Dawn, and then the whole bunch of satanic and later Western idiots who knew even less than the Golden Dawn and Crowley and Blavatsky, took Blavatsky's wrong interpretation of the left-hand path as being the way of selfishness, of evil, of black magic. Totally untrue. There is no validity to that belief. So in the 60s, and a little bit Dennis Wheatley, actually, the British author, also incorrectly used the phrase left-hand path. And he picked that up because he worked with Aleister Crowley when he was researching his satanic potboiler, The Devil Rides Out, in the 30s in London. So you've got a British contingent from satanic popular horror fiction. That's really where English people got the idea that the left-hand path means the devil, evil, black magic. It doesn't. And then, LaVey, Aquino, and the many, many, many successors and imitators, also chaos magic, all of the late 20th century occultism and quote satanic organizations adopted this adolescent reversal. If Madame Blavatsky and Crowley and the Golden Dawn said the left-hand path is evil and bad, then we, juvenile, adolescent rebels that we are saying we are bad and we are evil. So we will use this phrase that we do not understand what it means. We don't care what it means. We think it sounds cool, and we will call ourselves that despite the evidence. So if you're serious about religion, if you're serious about spirituality, and you're not just, a tourist passing through esoteric topics, then go look it up. Look at scholarly sources, and you will see the left-hand path. The only meaning it has is involved in tantric practice, the practice of tantra.
Oh, Schreck,
So I hope I've
your
made.
stick
I hope
in
I've.
the mud. words change and we've embraced this and this is what it means now and that's us
Right.
from the past and this is our thing now
Right.
and it's our left hand
Oh,
path.
absolutely. Well, I that's why I prefaced what I said. At this point in the Kali Yuga, facts don't matter. Truth doesn't matter. That is the nature of the Kali Yuga. Is we've gotten to the point where people just whatever emotionally appeals to them. I mean, of course, human nature has always been like that, but particularly now, and I think the internet has exacerbated this in that people need to find an instant identity. So, and I know from my experience dealing with people in the Church of Satan, the Temple of Set, the left wing woke organization, Temple of Satan,
Hmm.
all of these people, they just, and frankly, I need to point this out. People that are attracted to this pseudo tradition of the Western left hand path, which again, I can only underscore has no roots in anything but their imagination and the bullshit of LaVey, Aquino, and other people like them misinterpreting Eastern mysticism. They like the aesthetics. They like to wear black. They like goats. They like babies. They like black metal music. They they like the weird conglomeration of things that have come together over the decades, mostly from the 20th century,
Hmm.
that signify, I am an evil Satanist.
Outsider.
They like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm an outsider. I'm a rebel. I'm an adversary. They like that image. And of course, they all dress in hypocritically conformist manner, exactly the same, so that you can recognize them. They like the symbol of the pentagram, which also has nothing to do with Satanism originally. It's even used in Christianity. It's all over churches. It's one of the oldest symbols in the world. It doesn't, and I'm not going to bore you or your listeners with another dissertation on why Satanism itself is a completely bogus patchwork quilt of wrongly understood, cultural and literary and even cinematic tropes that really there is no such tradition as Satanism in any way. And of course, for people who may not be familiar with my work, as I've said many times, even the character of the devil is totally misunderstood. So I'll just repeat
Mm.
something I've said about 90 billion times, but I'll say it one more time, is if you really want to understand the devil, he is a minor lieutenant of Yahweh, of God. So if you're a big bad adversary and rebel against God, Yahweh, you are by taking the name of the devil and all of the satanic symbolism and imagery, you are serving a lowly thug lieutenant of Yahweh. You're not rebelling against him because there is no such figure in Abrahamic religion, which is opposite God, this evil, dark God. That's folklore and fiction. So
And I want to
that's
go back
the end
to
of my essay about that.
um, the uh, uh, the original, left and right from the Indian perspective, and kind of nail that down for people. Like, I mean, if you look at some of the imagery, I've got a red Tara here. The was it Kurakula? She's stomping on a
Right.
man. There's skulls and ooh, some of that imagery seems dark. There's aspects where what is it? There's a ritual where they go alone in a graveyard and imagine demons ripping their bodies apart. The Chandra
Chode.
Chode,
Called
yeah.
Chode.
And so
Chode. Hmm.
my under my view was that the original left hand path was the right hand path, like you've got your village, you've got your temple, you've got those standard things, and then for to really rip through and face this ego, there's these more wrathful or extreme aspects that's outside the village. Is there something to that, or how would you why both paths lead to the same
Uh,
place? So why is yeah,
Right.
why are those differences so,
Yeah.
extreme?
Let me try to explain that from the Eastern perspective. And
Yes.
again, remembering that in Hinduism and Buddhism and Jainism, the term Tantra, which in Sanskrit means weaving together, that everything is one, that it is all woven together. To weave is the actual translation
Hmm.
of Tantra. So that's the tradition and lineage from which this phrase left hand path comes from. There is a very physical manifestation of it in that when one is doing the sexual yoga that Western people get all either excited about or hate, which is only a very minor part of tantric practice. Again, even the word tantra has been distorted and tainted by its stupid connection with like sex work and tantric massage. That tantra is a religious practice connected to Hinduism and Buddhism. It is not. So the sexual aspect of it, though, because tantra and the Vajrayana uses every aspect of human activity and behavior for spiritual growth, and every everyday thing that we do, eating, walking, absolutely everything. So sexuality is not forbidden or demonized as it is in many other religions. Sexuality is used, but it is a yogic practice. It isn't normal copulation or sexuality as most people would understand it. It's actually connecting the male and female energies. And yes, it has to be the male and female. It can't be the female and female. It can't be the male and male, even if that offends politically correct sensibilities. There is a spiritual significance to the male and female energy coming together. And this can create a yogic change in the body and in the mind, which actually enhances and leads to liberation. So, in the sexual rite of left hand path yoga, the woman sits on the left. And so she is literally on the left hand, the feminine, the goddess principle. She sits on the left, the man on the right. The right, and even in our body, the Ida and Pingala, as it's known in Sanskrit, there is a masculine flow of energy and a feminine flow of energy in every body, and bringing the masculine and the feminine together into balance. And actually this which is used in Buddhism is not namaste, which is the Hindu phrase. It is literally a yogic mudra that places the left and right energy of the feminine and masculine together and creates a balance. It actually, by doing this, we create a circuit in which the male and female energies flowing on both sides of our body come together. So that's so there is even a physical manifestation of the left, in that the woman practitioner sits on the left during the sexual rite, which is displayed in many of these Vajrayana practices.
Mhm.
But as far as what you said about, yes, I think people have an idea based on Hinayana Buddhism, which is probably more familiar to Westerners, and also just pop culture understanding of Buddhism, that Buddhism is nice and pacifistic and smiling and sweet, and that's not the nature of it at all. Vajrayana Buddhism also has a great deal of death imagery, and the imagery of these wrathful gods, with skulls around their neck and weapons, and for instance, Vajrayogini is seen with a skull cap, and she's drinking blood from it. All of these things are a sign of the ferocity of these wrathful deities in their determination to awaken us to the truth of reality. Yeah.
And yeah, that it's that dark or wrathful, violent imagery geared toward such a positive goal. And in the Western occult, it's more like my little like a friend in evil. helping you. It's like sort of twisted from another way it was twisted from the proper left-hand path. It's not a sophisticated view of, yeah, I want to annihilate, I want to destroy, I want to kill my own ego. No,
Right.
they want to kill
Well,
their parents and their enemies in middle school.
well, this is a very common misconception about Tantric Buddhism that even Westerners who went to Tibet and encountered it. I mean, if you look at popular fiction from the 1890s onwards, it's called Lamaism, and there's like a feeling that Tibet is dark and mysterious and evil because they misunderstood the symbolism, the sexual and the wrathful symbolism looked frightening and demonic to Abrahamic eyes. I mean, for instance, a purba is a tool that looks like a knife that is used in rituals in Tibetan Buddhism. And the purba, as you indicated, it represents destroying your own ego. It is not outer directed. I mean, also in Hinduism and in Shaktism, the figure of Kali that is the way that the East sees femininity, ferocious,
Mhm.
powerful, not a submissive, docile trad wife. That's not the idea of femininity. And of course, people like idiot Jordan Peterson, I remember, looked at the image of Kali with her tongue out and her defiant, ferocious presence, and again, this shows you how Westerners misinterpret everything through their very limited perspective. He said, well, she represents feminism, the destructive nature of feminism. So, and
Mm.
again, I understand. I'm pissing into the wind by explaining these things. Unless you seriously want to practice Shaktism or Buddhism, the actual left-hand path, this is just all intellectual discourse. It only has meaning if you intend to practice it and to do it. So, people misinterpret these things greatly. But to put a cap on that area of it, exactly what you said, to echo that, Satanists and occultists look at these wrathful images as representatives of their ego, like their unleashed ego, because I mean, basically, it's narcissism
Mm.
with some religious perfume sprayed over it. That's
Yeah.
that's what it is. Solipsism taken to the degree of toxic narcissism, of selfishness. Vajrayana is not trying to destroy the ego, which is another wrong idea, but to see that your ego is an illusion. This idea that you are an independent self, not dependent on all other things in the universe, that this is an illusion of your perception that can be changed through meditation and spiritual practice. So it isn't even like the ego is this evil
Right.
thing that needs to be smashed, which some people misinterpret. It's a misperception. You're looking through a prism that is not correct. You're not understanding reality, that there is no permanent, enduring self that is you. So that is the nature of the feminine wisdom. So that and Satan, the left hand path, their wrong usage of the word, exalt the ego, when in fact the genuine left hand path and right hand path have no other purpose but to dissolve the illusion of the ego to see reality properly.
So on your journey, we've discussed these, you started very young, using the Bible as sort of a way to investigate the devil, and you were a devil worshiper,
Mm-hmm.
and not an atheist LaVey type. You rejected that to that man's face, and then moved into the Temple of Set. But all throughout that, you had been, on the side meditating, but I think you had admitted for more
Yeah.
selfish reasons. When did it just, I guess what was the lightning bolt where you were like, all that is, I just wasted 30 years.
There, there wasn't a lightning bolt. It was a gradual and subtle search for the truth. I think the important thing to understand, let me briefly go through the spiritual path that I took. I didn't go looking for the spiritual or the metaphysical. As soon as I came into this world, it was very present and obvious to me. So, for instance, the idea of rebirth or reincarnation, as I've said in other interviews and written elsewhere, some of my first thoughts were, where am I? This is the wrong place. What am I doing here? What are these humans? What is this world? I had a very clear understanding. I am somehow, as a a little bit above a toddler. My first inarticulate thoughts were an awareness, this is not the right place. What am I doing here? How can you have that thought if you don't already have a mind to compare it to? So I've easily understood the idea of reincarnation, that this is not my first life and that I come from somewhere else. So that is an intrinsic, essence of understanding Buddhism, of Vajrayana. So I didn't need a lightning bolt to convince me of that. I knew that I had been here before. I also had several past life experiences, not through guided meditation or anything, but spontaneous awareness in certain places that I had lived before. They were nothing extraordinary, but I had no doubt, okay, this is a past life memory. And I could go into the details of them, but that's not really necessary. The point is, I had spontaneous understandings of it. My earliest metaphysical awareness, other than this feeling, where the hell am I? What is this place that I'm in? Was an encounter, as I've described many times, with the Venus de Milo, a statue that my parents got in Paris at the Louvre on their honeymoon. It happened to be on a shelf in our living room, and I was absolutely fixated and absorbed on this statue of Venus, or Aphrodite, as it actually is, because it comes from Greece. And I felt that she was communicating to me. So this was already, in a way, a tantric experience, an encounter with the goddess, and a feeling that the goddess was radiating some energy to me. Now, I didn't know what Venus or Aphrodite was. I asked my father eventually, and he had a classical education, so he was able to explain, she's one of the Greek or Roman pantheon, Venus or Aphrodite, etc., the goddess of love, etc. So I also never had to be convinced that deities exist. I felt her presence communicate to me through that image of her, which was the traditional way. I mean, to the ancient Greeks and Egyptians and Babylonians and Romans, the essence of the deity was in the statue, which were meant to be venerated in temples. So then my first fascination with the metaphysical was Greek mythology and Nordic mythology, which I studied obsessively, even as very young. And only after that, a babysitter who described herself as a witch introduced me to this Bible quote, which, as I've explained, comes directly from Dracula, in which Renfield, in the 1931 movie, quotes Dracula saying, "All these things I will give you if you will bow down and serve me." And my mentor, this teenage witch, explained to me, well, that's from the Bible, and that's what the devil says to Jesus. Then I started looking at the Bible, as you mentioned, weirdly, and in my weird, out of context, childish way, thought, okay, the Bible will show me who this devil is. And then I began looking into the grimoires, Faust, everything to do with black magic and the devil that I could. But I never was only and solely interested in that. I always looked at every spiritual tradition, every single one, throughout my whole life. So despite being a devil worshiper, And I use that phrase to distinguish from Satanism, which can mean atheism, and that never made any sense to me. I continued to look into every spiritual tradition you can name, all of them, in great detail. When I moved to London in the early 80s, I took I converted to the Shaktiite cult of Kali through an Indian guru in London. And so I already was practicing the worship of Kali at the same time as I was doing diabolical rites, traditional ones from grimoires, not made up postmodern rites, but doing it by the book. In 1981, when I was very young, I went to a Zen center in Los Angeles, and from a Roshi who had learned from one of the main Japanese Roshis who had brought Zen to America, I learned how to meditate. But as you said, I didn't adopt Buddhism. I wanted to learn meditation as a kind of magical practice so that my consciousness could do magic more effectively. But I did learn to meditate. And even before that, when I was 13, I learned from this hippie girl who had gone to India. She learned Advaita meditation and was authorized to teach it. So even when I was 13, I started meditating. And I continued to meditate even as a devil worshiper. So I was extremely promiscuous in my practice. The
And what
werewolf order. Yeah,
So,
go ahead.
and what was, and we'll go back to that, the werewolf order, of course, but what's driving you? Like, what are you searching for? What are you trying to get from all these explorations? And it's like almost a manic, I've got to go, I'm looking at Aphrodite, I'm looking at Kali, I'm looking at the devil. Like, what were you after?
To understand the nature of reality, to understand what is the ultimate truth. That has been my sole driving purpose in life. I remember a girlfriend of mine in the 80s asked me, what are you ultimately looking for? And I remember telling her, where are we? What is the answers to the mysteries of our existence? And yes, it manic and obsessive. And to the point where that's really all I care about. Initiation means you renounce the outer world. I don't feel any more connection to the outer world and society than I did as a child when I was thinking, I know I have come to the wrong place. And part of it is, how do you get out of here? How do you get out of the human realm? And that is ultimately what. Now I looked into Aztec magic, to the god Tezcatlipoca. I could go on for hours with everything I looked into. When Zena and I we left occultism altogether in sort of in the late 90s, and then we joined the Temple of Set, which I won't go through because you already did the previous interview, thinking that it was an actual temple of Set dedicated to the actual Egyptian god Set. And that was a complete disappointment because they weren't. They were involved with this entirely fan fiction, imaginative creation of Set. It was basically Satan, a loftier, more intellectual version of Satan. So then that led to this huge clash because we were thinking of the actual God Set, which is not what they're interested in. And of course, as I've mentioned before, in 1983, when I went on a pilgrimage to Egypt, I had a religious experience of the presence of Set in the tomb of Seti the First, the pharaoh. So that, you know, um, I looked into John Dee in great detail. Went to the British Museum to find his scrying stone, which I just saw again recently. I explored every aspect of spirituality. Before I ultimately took the refuge to Vajrayana Buddhism, I explored Sufism in great depth with a sheikh, took it seriously, looked into all of it, ultimately rejected it, but I do believe there is wisdom in Sufism, and actually surprisingly a lot of practices that are very similar to Vajrayana, which shows a certain universal spiritual truth. So the point is, I was never only a devil worshiper. That was one. I mean, my interest in Gnosticism and Abraxas has been a huge red thread throughout my spiritual life for decades. My fascination with the Gnostic deity Abraxas and Gnosticism goes back, many decades. So that is another, thread that has gone through my spiritual life. And in many ways, I see parallels between Gnosticism and Tantric Buddhism, although the problem is so little of the actual practice of Gnosticism has been lost. It's very difficult to know exactly what they practiced, although, direct communion with Abraxas, with the God of gods, can be achieved. The point is, Tantric Buddhism, ultimately why I'm totally committed to that as the path to liberation, is because the lineage has been passed on from Shakyamuni Buddha himself and the Buddhas before that as a direct lineage through all of the great siddhis and masters of Tantric Buddhism to my own teacher, Trango Rinpoche, and the other gurus that have taught me and instructed me. Trango Rinpoche was taught by the 16th Karmapa. When the 17th Karmapa was reborn, my teacher, Trango Rinpoche, taught him. So the thing is, after my misadventures and wasted time in the do-it-yourself world of Western occultism, I sought a tradition and a lineage that can be absolutely proven and that connects to techniques and methods that work, that have been proven to work for many others. So that is the great benefit of Tantric Buddhism.
And I'd want to counter you a little bit. I don't think you wasted your time because now you're armed to help others to not go down the wrong path that, down
Yeah.
so, we've learned so much from you, from your misadventures. I think that helped build you up into where if you had
Absolutely.
just started this straight on into Buddhism,
Right.
I think you'd be weaker, to be honest. I think you wouldn't have
Yeah.
been able to answer all that. And
Well,
yeah,
no, I perhaps I misspoke in that. I mean, yes, I
well, no,
wasted a lot of my personal time with a lot of
yeah,
horrible, narcissistic, stupid people. Yes, but as far as I understand what evil is, I understand what the darkness is, I understand what the ego is. Uh, Better than many spiritual teachers because they haven't gone through it to that degree. So yes, and my own teacher said to me, for instance, I said, should I move to Nepal with you? And he said, we don't need more Buddhist teachers in Nepal. Reach the people that you already can reach and wake them up. He said that I have a unique perspective on these things. So yes, I agree with you. I mean, it was my karmic. I know that whatever I was in my past life, I was continuing the path of black magic and sorcery and occultism. I have no doubt that whoever I was the last time, I just picked up where I left off. It was all
mm.
very familiar to me. And I would say this is probably my first lifetime in many lifetimes in which I have gone in another direction. So yes, by having gone through the darkness in many ways to a degree that most people couldn't even comprehend. I mean, visible manifestation of the devil, of Goetic demons, not just reading about it, not just intellectualizing it, deeply involved with it and enmeshed in it, I am able to help people to the light because I know what the darkness is.
Well, on that, I mean, you brought up the Goetic and, the manifestation of the demons. And just as an aside, a big part of my channel is I am confronting some of these YouTube black magicians. I have received emails from people where they've spent over 3 grand with no results for magic. They teach cutting themselves using blood. They cut the heads off snakes. I don't know how they get away with this on YouTube, but there it is. And once they're gone, there'll just be more crap to bubble up from the toilet anyway. But I have been using this channel to push back on those people. Um, they're calling, in fact, they told me, Brad, the left-hand path just isn't for you. Just go away. So that's how
Mm.
twisted the term has become. I'm actually trying to follow the proper left-hand path, and it's become so twisted. Can you talk about the dangers of this Goetic side, the blood, how that's not left-hand path, and that's, in my opinion, maybe if they're contacting anything, it's probably low-level entities that are aiming to just harm people. I don't know.
Yes. Well, first of all, I consider myself to have been stupid, I did waste a lot of time conjuring demons, using the traditional methods to conjure demons, and I believe it caused a great deal of harm. Although I got over it by totally transforming my spiritual practice and understanding how negative it is. If anybody out there is doing that, demons and lower elementals do not give a fuck about humanity. They want to create harm. They are cruel. They're like the predators of the spiritual world. It would, and I've said this before, it would be as stupid as leaving your doors and windows open and assuming there are no criminals. Demons are predatory, low level, they're entirely malevolent creatures. They do not want your benefit. And whatever you may gain from them, the karmic debt that you are making is not worth the trade because it will destroy you ultimately. There's no ambiguity about that. We don't even know what the Goetic demons are exactly. I have worked with them at great length in the 1980s, and I've had and definitely had results. But the karmic damage that it does to deal with demonic entities is not worth what little bit of result. And you can use any, I mean, why not? And why not appeal to the gods who are in many ways benevolent, and they do seek, some of them, to actually help humanity.
That's what
So,
I've never understood is these obscure mixed up names, and we, like you said, we're not sure where that's from. And you have the opportunity, not you don't have to become a Buddhist, but there's other gods that are benevolent and have been around, verified for thousands and
right.
thousands of years. Why bother with these bizarre, malevolent, you know?
Well, so many of the so-called demons are, yeah, demonic entities exist. Every religion and every culture on the planet understands this. That's a fact. You don't really have to fear them, but don't invite them into your life and don't put their symbols all around you and tattoo them on you and listen to their names and music constantly. You are conjuring and bringing these spirits. I mean, it's literally like cutting yourself and calling for sharks to eat you.
Ex
That's
ex
about
it's literally
as
just about
sensible as
that.
that would be.
It's
Nothing good
insanity.
will come from it. It cannot possibly lead to any positive result.
Well, I've
And
done
as
videos on Anima Nora. She is gone. The EA co-editing, his channel, the drug abuse, the many victims that have come from that, and on and on and on. I just like these are their top. These are our good ones. I just when you have an opportunity to look at that, and then sort of what really helped me was also to see that you're able with Buddhism to incorporate gods from different pantheons, different cultures. We've got altars to Set, but as long as we have the Buddhist ideals at the top, above all of that, like an umbrella, you're able
right,
to have the in a safer way. Uh, you do magic, I do magic, but it's through with an ethic and vows in place to protect us and to help all that magic to help the world and
right.
help ourselves to help the world better. So I think that's something that really helped you to incorporate all these things you had come about through your life to put it under one tent.
Well, I think it's important, maybe for people who don't really, because one of the main misunderstandings among Westerners about Buddhism is that it's atheistic. It is not atheistic and never was. A lot of Eastern teachers downplay the supernatural, the demonic, the divine, because Westerners are usually, rationalists or
Right.
people who don't believe in that kind of thing. So they present it in a very watered down way. Uh, so maybe it's important. I'm sure many of your viewers know this, but in case they don't, all schools of Buddhism understand the cosmology of the six realms of being. There are many hell realms, many, not just one, many different hell realms. There is the realm of the hungry ghosts or pretas. There is the realm of animals, which we see and which we share and which we are partly a part of. There is the human realm, which is called the realm of desire, because the main characteristic of mortal beings is to always yearn for something to fulfill an emptiness within us, which is the nature of the suffering of samsara. There is the realm of the asuras, who are demigods, somewhat comparable to the Titans or figures in Nordic mythology like Loki. They're not exactly divine, but they are higher than human, and they are usually driven by anger and negative emotions, but they are on a higher spiritual level than humans. Then there is the Diva Loka, the realm of the gods, and above that, there are the formless realms where spiritual practitioners who have not completely become liberated, but they have gone beyond a physical form exist. So that's very important to understand that Buddhism does not, the gods are not seen as the cause of our life. They are not seen as the ultimate arbiter of life. Our own mind and our own karma has created this world. And the gods are still seen as trapped in samsara, even though they are on a much higher level of power and knowledge and wisdom than we are, and they live much longer than we do. They are also part of the suffering of samsara.
And that's a
And
big
we have,
difference from Hinduism. I had just visited a temple, and they were talking how the gods are the ones that free you, that liberate you. And I told them,
right,
I'm like, well, in Buddhism, you're on your own, baby. The gods themselves are unfortunately trapped in that cycle.
right. And yeah, this is the major difference. And if you go to India, Hindu nationalists hate Buddhists for not acknowledging the absolute authority of the Hindu gods. I
Mm,
mean, there's a lot of struggle and conflict between Hinduism and Buddhism. Um, I mean, for instance, I'll give you some examples. In the earliest Buddhist sutras, when people have this crazy idea that Buddhism is atheistic, you can look in the scriptures. After Buddha was enlightened, he said, "I don't think I can teach this to humanity. It's too complicated, the Dharma. So I guess I really can't do anything with it." And the gods Indra and Brahma, the main gods of Hinduism or Vedic religion, if you want to be precise, came to him and urged him to teach. So Buddhism as a religion only exists because two gods persuaded the Buddha Shakyamuni to teach the Dharma. And gods and supernatural beings of all kinds are very important to actual, real, traditional Buddhism, not the Western whitewashed version of it.
and maybe we should, you had mentioned it before, touch on sort of the whole point, emptiness and escaping these rebirths, which are different than reincarnation. Could you, I know this isn't the place to go into, it's so complicated, but just so
Hmm.
people understand a little bit, like if they were curious about Buddhism, what is the point of it and sort of the view what emptiness is versus it's not nothing.
Right, right. Well, first of, I mean, to boil it down to the most succinct description, the Dharma, Buddha Dharma means, which is the actual name of the religion. Buddhism is a Western term. Buddha Dharma means to awaken Buddha to the Dharma, the way things are. So the name of the religion tells you what its purpose is, to awaken to the way things are. We do that by following the Eightfold Path, by meditating in Vajrayana, by working with yidams or wisdom deities. It requires practice. It requires training your mind. The ultimate point, the first thing that the Buddha said to his disciples after his enlightenment was this phrase, all is suffering. And the cause of suffering is that we are trapped in an illusion and we are kind of sleepwalking. And he woke up. And when he woke up, he spontaneously learned the way to wake up, which is what Buddhism teaches. So ultimately is to free ourselves from the cycle of rebirth, which is the phrase that Buddhism uses rather than the Hindu reincarnation. Because rebirth, when we are reborn, we are not exactly the same Atman, as in Hinduism sees that you have one soul that keeps recycling, and it's exactly basically the same. Buddhism sees that through the karma that we create in this lifetime and all of our millions of others, those things carry into a new being who has memories of who we used to be, characteristics, but it's not, and the comparison has been if you took a match to a candle and then moved the flame and lit another candle, it's not exactly the same. Before you were born and after you die, consciousness remains. So, but it is not the traditional idea of the Atman or the soul. So the point of Buddhism, the point of Vajrayana Buddhism, as in all other schools, is to free ourselves from this illusion that keeps us trapped and attached to this illusory world of suffering, and to free ourselves from it while we are still within this human vessel that we have been born into. And if not, there are techniques to do it at the moment of death, which is called poa. There's a technique to remove ourselves consciously at the time that our karma brings us to death. So the key points to understand, if you're interested in Buddhism, are that we have been reborn billions of times, not only in this world, but in all the 6 realms and in many other universes, worlds that are beyond our comprehension. This little planet Earth is not the only level of reality. We have existed in many, many different levels of consciousness and being, and we are in this one now. Through practicing the Dharmic teachings that the Buddha passed on, we can free ourselves from suffering and from the cycle of rebirth. So that is the ultimate point. Now, if, as many Westerners and Easterners, if you think this is not ultimately suffering to be in this world, that would be completely pointless to you. But the reason people think that is because they are attached to the idea that it's real, that it is not an illusion. So you're clinging to a dreamlike state of consciousness, which you think is real, and obviously that can only lead to disaster. It'd be like investing in a bank in a dream and expecting to withdraw cash from it. And maybe the most profound and radical teaching of Buddhism is embodied in the words that the 16th Karmapa, the leader of my school, Karmakaju School of Buddhism, when he was dying, one of his students was crying at his deathbed. He was dying of cancer, but completely without pain or suffering. And the 16th Karmapa said to his student to console him, "Nothing happens." If you can understand that, this is not happening. This is an illusion. Our mind is projecting a hallucinatory, very vivid, dreamlike experience. We can wake up from this experience through meditation, through practice, and we can apprehend emptiness or sunyata, which is synonymous with feminine wisdom. And the feminine is what pushes us to that. And actually, it ties into what has been my magical motto for decades, which comes from Goethe's Faust: the eternal feminine draws me onwards. That is always been my magical motto, and that is essentially the principle of Vajrayana, that the feminine wisdom can wake us up to free ourselves from suffering.
Now, there's many varieties of Buddhism, Pure Land, Zen, this and that. I think that the Tantric, the Tibetan side, you advocate because in the Kali Yuga, in this time of degeneration, uh, why do you believe this is the best form, or do you?
No, I don't. All forms. The Buddha Shakyamuni gave 84,000 teachings for the designed for the qualities and dispensation of each mind. So Hinayana Buddhism works for people who they're at the karmic level, where Hinayana Buddhism, or so-called Theravada, is the best, which is also called Southern Buddhism, the Buddhism of Sri Lanka, and so forth. Pure Land Buddhism is the most popular form in Japan. A lot of people think it's Zen, but actually Zen is not so widely practiced. They're more practiced in the West now. Amida, or Pure Land Buddhism, is the most popular form in Japan. Korea has its own. China has its own. There are many, many different forms. Even in the Himalayas, the Buddhism practice in Nepal is a little bit different than in Tibet.
Hmm.
But all of them, there is no better. It is that Vajrayana is suitable for people of a certain karmic disposition, Hinayana for others, Mahayana for others, and the Buddha deliberately gave humanity and other beings these many different forms because we all need different methods. So I wouldn't say one is
Okay.
better than the other at all. Vajrayana is the quickest way to liberation. For instance,
Oh,
in Hinayana, it is said if you do the practice properly, you can become liberated within 7 lifetimes, which, when you consider we've had billions of lifetimes, is not that
that's
long.
yeah.
Vajrayana is saying you can do it in this lifetime, but it requires a different approach. It requires taking everything that we experience in our everyday life on the path. Everything. Every experience we have can be used as a fuel for spiritual awakening. So it doesn't, of course, it follows the ethical precepts of Buddhism, which are the same in all schools, but it doesn't retire from life. It doesn't withdraw from everyday life. It deals with it head on, and that is a much faster way to liberation.
Then going
Another
to
important
a
thing
monastery. Yeah.
what distinguish well, there are, of course, there are the Gelug school of Buddhism, which is led by the Dalai Lama, um, is largely monastic, for instance. So there is a monastic side that
Hmm.
would be the right hand path of the Vajrayana.
Mm.
Um, but taking every aspect of, every moment of our day, every second of our day, everything that we experience can be a means to awakening if we understand the Dharma. So that's, so it's useful for certain people. It isn't for everybody. And
And
Buddhism
hmm,
is not for everybody,
hmm.
and it is not a religion of conversion. It's you are either drawn to it or you're not. We do not seek to gain more Buddhists. So
And if someone were pursuing this and they're looking at, the final outcome in this lifetime, I become enlightened, and you've met the Dalai Lama, you've met your, other people that are probably enlightened. Um, what I think in the people look at it like you're almost getting superpowers, or you know, is it? I know the Zen is a little bit more mundane, like before enlightenment, chop wood; after enlightenment, chop wood. What do you become or unbecome when you reach this state
Hmm.
of it
Well,
of actual
yes,
enlightenment?
Westerners and certain Easterners are obsessed with the so-called siddhis, a Sanskrit word which means attainments. And if you meditate for decades, you are going to gain what seem like supernatural powers, but they are actually the normal qualities of the Buddha nature, which is in every sentient being, every bug, every frog, every cow, your neighbors, the people you hate, the people you love, every living being with a sentient, in other words, a mind, has the Buddha nature within. So since we are in this dream of obscurations and illusion, we don't see that these so-called magical powers are the normal quality of what the mind can do, what the Buddha nature is. So yes, things, I'm not going to get into what they are because it can give people fixed ideas and
Mm,
delusions, and that's certainly not the point. The point of Buddhism, as all the great masters have emphasized, and which I tell my students all the time when they have these experiences, don't get hung up on them. Don't grip
right.
them and grasp them like, yes, experiences, for instance, like astral projection, as Westerners call it, can start to happen spontaneously when you meditate. When you clarify the illusions of the mind, telepathy, uh, magic becomes almost spontaneous because the more you understand reality, the more the psychic, what atheists and rationalists call psychic phenomena, they become extremely common if you meditate and you do the practice. But
And
these really are not extraordinary things. That is the nature of the mind.
we started working together, and you were helping me learn meditation and all of that. And I had just in the back of my mind some doubts about you, as you would
Mhm.
with any teacher or whatever. It's like, what?
As you should, as the
Yeah.
Buddha emphasized, do not just
Mm.
blindly trust him or any teacher. Do the methods. The methods are what matter. Of
And
course, you have to
mm,
ultimately have trust in your
right.
teacher, but that's hard won over a long period. But
And,
what the Buddha says is, don't trust
mm,
me. Do these
do it.
techniques and see if they work.
And I think I got a little blessing or something. And please, yeah, don't. And you helped me, don't make a big deal out of these things. Don't cling to them. But I just had a flash. I sent you an AI picture of what I had made. I'm like, this is kind of strange. Where it was just an image of you on a parapet type with a forest with a mountain, and you were in a red robe, sort of teaching. But I was like, this is weird because it looks sort of Asian, but then there's these Greek pillars behind you. And I had forgotten or didn't know you were in Greece, teaching in a red robe,
When that
um,
happens.
at at um, at and you sent me the pictures of the forest and the mountain behind you. And that was just a little, I felt a gift to, okay, Brad, don't waste time. Go with this guy a little bit. And, you can trust these teachings. That's what I took that as. And my magic practice has become so much easier, especially when I align it to ethics. Like, if I needed money, let the animals have resources, let the children starving and in the war torn, and if there's anything left out of that infinite compassion, I will accept it and use it to help others. And I have found when,
Mm.
all these things, through the Buddhist lens, as opposed to the former occultism I was doing, things are just so much easier and positive. Like
Hmm.
I look at it as it was like me trying to blow wind into a sail and move across the ocean, as opposed to just using the wind.
Going with the wind.
And this
Right.
is to me going with the wind, the universe, I don't know. It's just I'm a beginner in all this, but already after working with you, It's been quite transformative, and I just, if people have any attraction to it, I suggest just give it a go, maybe down the line.
Mhm. Well, what you're saying is reflected in the tradition of the teachings. The actual word for suffering, which is not really well translated, that the Buddha used was dukkha, which means dissatisfaction. Ultimately, human beings, no matter what we attain, we always feel like it's never enough. We always need more. Nothing is ever sufficient to satisfy this inner suffering of samsara. When we start practicing the Dharma and when we start applying ethics to our human mind, the strict code of ethics that the Buddha taught, then we start to experience sukha, which is the opposite of dukkha. And sukha means ease. Things go smoothly. Even in this suffering world of samsara, things start to become, and this is one of the surefire signs that what you're doing is working. When you are really committed to the Dharma, and the Buddha promised this, your life will become easier. You will certainly have challenges, and that is the nature of the mortal realm, but it will become easier to do your practice and things will go smoothly. And also because you are, for instance, you said if you're doing something as practical as magic for money, but you're asking that all beings benefit from your right rather than only you, you're gaining a huge amount of karmic merit that actually guarantees that that will come into being. If you're doing magic for strictly selfish purposes with no concern for other beings, then it could work on a very limited degree, but it's going to backfire. So
Absolutely.
yes, the practice actually makes your life easier. And this is something you start to see in the first weeks, the first months, the first year. So yes, it's not about just
And
blindly
warning,
believing. Yeah.
and warning, there will be parts of your life. I won't go in my own personal things, but as you know, uh, that might require dramatic, career changes, marriage changes, moving. I mean, like very inconvenient things that have been obstructing you for years, and you just kind of didn't want to face it. And when you're meditating
Hmm.
and open to all of this, it's not Buddhism is not pleasant for me so far. For me, it's not a. It's like it it is challenging and challenges me to it demands me to grow and to let go of this clinging. I've got a long way to go, but if you're, if you have sort of that warrior spirit and are honest with yourself, this I think could be transformative for people, with that kind of outlook or karma. At least
Yeah,
that's been
well,
my experience.
initiation, if anyone tells you initiation is pleasant or fun or it's easy, they're lying to you. Real initiation means working with your own flaws, your own neuroses. And like waking up from a nightmare, you wake up and you start to see, well, where am I? What? And then you start, when you begin meditating properly, you look at your life, you look at your relationships, you look at your relationship with the world, your job, your neuroses. If you can't accept that you have neuroses, that you have wrong ideas, Buddhism is a cure, it is an antidote for an illness. If, like many occultists, you think you're a superior, exalted being already, and you're just joining, a collective of other exalted geniuses, you're not going to make any progress. If you don't think I need to work on myself every day. We all do, every human being, because of huge karmic weight of millions of years of negative actions. We all need to purify our karma through our practice. So it's not looking into obscure esoteric themes, although they are necessary.
Mhm.
It's looking within you, fixing your own mind, dealing with your own consciousness, looking at your own habits every day, looking at the world that way, you better start thinking, I need to change these things in my life. I need to change these things about myself.
Well, yeah, I would like to, I guess, end now with a little challenge to people that have a little curiosity or like, I'm not sure about that, or if anything's pulling them. There, we had spoken before, and there is a mantra, and if there's any like curiosity, I think this little challenge of just once a day chanting this in your sacred place. Um, and then come back and leave in the comments, if there's been any changes or, good or bad or indifferent. But this is is it the Tara
Yes, let
mantra?
me explain that a little. It is the mantra of Tara, and Tara, as far as the myth of Tara, Avalokiteshvara or Chenrezig, who is my main wisdom deity, the one that my guru gave me to focus on and to become, he was trying to free billions of beings from rebirth. And he felt like he was getting somewhere. And then he looked downwards and saw millions of beings being sucked into the hell realms. And he saw what a huge, impossible, even futile task. And a tear came from his eye out of compassion for the suffering of beings. And that tear became Tara. And she is considered a wish fulfilling jewel. And the reason I suggested this one, you don't need an empowerment to gain. Anybody can do the Tara mantra, and she wants to help you. Also, I chose Tara because she is the queen of the Dakini. She is the symbol of the feminine wisdom in Buddhism. So it's also a mantra connected to the Dakinis, these mysterious female figures who guide us sometimes fiercely or as trickster beings to enlightenment. So and now you'd have to do this mantra for many weeks to start to get results. But that's why I chose it, because she's the very essence of the left-hand path, and that she's a feminine wisdom deity who grants wishes to those who are in need of help or who need support. In
And
fact,
here, mm,
the way she's represented, if you look at her, her leg is she's about to spring up to help other beings. That's what her symbolism embodies.
and I've posted, and I will, it should be included here in the editing. So yeah, try that for a month, 3 months. Come back and leave comments if this conversation has sparked any interest in this original left-hand path and get away from all that negativity. So, Nicholas, I greatly appreciate your
I
time.
was just going to say,
Mm,
I'm sure many people who are watching this are not necessarily caught up in occultism, but
mm.
anyone who has further questions is welcome to write. They can reach me at my email, which is schreckworks@gmail.com, schreckworx@gmail.com. You can also find that on my Instagram and Facebook easily. So if anyone is genuinely curious about pursuing Vajrayana, then they can inquire there. I cannot ask immediately I can't answer immediately because of my schedule, but I will eventually get back to you. So if anyone is sincerely and truly interested, they're welcome to begin there.
And part of what is cool about Buddhism is it's very practical and it's here and now. There are problems today and aspects today in society where it seems to have a lot of answers. And having it being left-hand path, being feminine, how does that relate to today? I know you've criticized a lot of the red pill people and that sort of incel and macho occultist, all of this. How does that connect to this practice?
Well, in Buddhism, there is a concept called the Mara, and Mara was the god of death who came to the Buddha exactly at the moment he was enlightened and tried to stop him from becoming enlightened. You can read the story of the Buddha's enlightenment and see the many, sort of like when the devil confronts Jesus in the desert and tries to dissuade him from taking on his spiritual role. Mara sort of has a similar role in the Buddhist lore. And in Buddhism, Maras with a not as a personal force are obstacles to initiation. And of generosity and darks, there are many Maras, many obscurations, many obstacles. If you're on the spiritual path, this is not a basically benevolent world. The anti-spiritual forces of counter-initiation, the demonic forces that try to prevent us, they are, in a Gnostic sense, they are like the jailers, like the prison staff that want to keep us imprisoned. If you make any progress on the spiritual path, the guards, so to speak, will try to get you back into your cell. And they can be very subtle or they can be very extreme. And as you said, considering that the left-hand path and Vajrayana and Tantra are particularly emphasized on the veneration of the feminine principle, worshiping the goddess, seeing the feminine divine as exalted and the source of wisdom, similar to the way that Sophia is seen in Gnosticism, Sophia being the root word of philosophy, of wisdom. One of the most destructive, I would say the first destructive force that has to be mentioned, and it's tied into it, is the internet. With the advent of the internet and people being sucked into the internet and then in smartphones and living in this completely digital dystopia that has consumed pretty much all of the post 9/11 21st century, I would say that is one of the key obstacles to initiation on any path. And out of the epidemic of the internet, or pandemic, in that it is a universal disease, comes the whole red pill, misogynist hatred of women that has become so extremely prevalent among young people, but really it's tainted politics. It's really become a cancer at the heart of the Kali Yuga, of our modern anti-culture. This hatred of women, this mistrust of women, this, the whole trad wife phenomenon, the desire to put women back into the kitchen and remove her from any autonomy. And I know that people who are stuck in ideology can only think in very black and white, ideological, dualistic terms. In no way am I a feminist, nor does being a tantric practitioner have any political significance. So it's a kind of sign of the sickness of the times, that thinking to venerate the feminine, to see the wisdom and divinity of the feminine, is automatically feminist. I know that's how these people see it. As I mentioned earlier, Jordan Peterson falsely thinking that Kali is a symbol of feminism. So the whole red pill idea, the idea that women are inferior and are meant to be subjugated, and that they're out there to trick men, and that you have to learn to manipulate them, which even goes back to the 90s and the whole pickup artist culture. I mean, I've seen this infection developing, and really young men, and it's not their fault entirely, are exposed to this internet poison, making it look like women are some kind of alien, hostile, evil species that either need to be conquered and subjugated or totally given up on, that they're, and the whole incel phenomenon, the horrible effect of Andrew Tate, Nick Fuentes, and his like open hatred and wanting to take away women's right to vote. And this is not on an ideological level, because I don't support either right or left whatsoever. I don't take politics or ideology of that type seriously at all. It's a very primitive way of thinking of governance. I do have, of course, my own ideas of governance and politics, but they have nothing to do with standard dualistic ideological left and right. So this whole idea that women are inferior or they're intrinsically evil and tricky and manipulative, and you have to learn techniques of how to master them, has created a sickness and a poison between men and women, and that is a huge obstacle to progress on the tantric path. So it really has to be emphasized. And it's, I mean, so many terrible ideas have come from the internet and spread. And that this fear that young men have of women, I see it all the time. It's very widespread. And even if they don't embrace the worst insanity of Andrew Tate or that kind of, complete pimp misogyny,
Mm.
it's still, there's an idea that women are unfathomable evil beings that you have to figure out some code how to trick them, and it's dehumanizing women to a great degree. And the point of tantric initiation and many spiritual systems of initiation is the veneration of the feminine. So if a man cannot accept the feminine as a part of himself and as something to respect and to revere, and not only see as an equal, but possibly as a superior, that's the tantric exaltation of the feminine. So yeah, I think it's a good question that you brought up and important to consider. And again, it's not any. I'm not going to persuade anyone. People who are hypnotized and brainwashed into that way of thinking, and who live in an algorithm of hatred of women, are never going to wake up to it. But I do think it has to be pointed out. And I have known some younger students of mine who were a little bit exposed to this virus, who I did manage to free from some of the worst concepts of it, particularly in the disastrous decline of the United States of America. It's extremely prevalent there. You don't find it as much in Europe or the UK
Mm.
or Asia, but the United States, it's practically become like a folk belief system.
Mm.
Yeah, so I can only say there's nothing good about it. That is not the way, actually in Tantra, there's the idea of the vira, the hero, the masculine male. This Andrew Tate and this kind of hatred of women, that is not a hero. That is a weak, frightened little boy who is
Mm.
afraid of the power and mystery of the goddess of femininity, and who withdraws into almost juvenile, puerility. So that is not something to look up to. There are many better models of being a real warrior, of being a real vira, a real hero. And vira is the root word in Sanskrit of our word virile,
Mm.
manly, but it means something entirely different to be heroic than to be one of these, egotistical, hate-filled misogynists. That's got nothing to, there is no way of initiation that excuses that.
And I've seen young men more, I have a son, and he seems to be solid, but people have come to me, seeking black magic to help them get the girl, or have all this sex and money and be the Chad,
Mm.
uh, and I just see this whole, are they Gen Z and millennials, whatever. There does seem to be this void with men of retreating, giving up, and then turning that into this hatred. And
Mhm.
I do believe if they have time, if they can just start finding a meditative practice, maybe they need help in other ways, but as one part of it, uh, to clear the mind, to see things as they are, and find this, we are, as you said, it's half feminine, half male, and it's that balance and respecting the actual women in the world. Do you think that, I mean, did you your students that kind of came out of that had a little of the virus, did meditation help them
Mhm.
to do that, or what
Well,
techniques?
meditation, but also understanding the importance of the feminine in the Vajrayana teaching, and also in the Shaktiite teaching before that. Um, but also, I mean, I have to say, it is deeply rooted in the three Abrahamic religions. This whole concept of women are our
Mm,
property in Judaism, in almost every form of Christianity, in Shia and Sunni Islam. The woman is your property. She's, you
mhm,
know, she's a little more useful than a cow.
mm.
And that's where this whole idea and all, I mean, if anyone out there thinks any of these ridiculous TikTok level concepts have any meaning in the real world, high value man, high value woman, alpha male doesn't mean anything. It has no scientific basis. There's no such thing. It's actually based on a misunderstanding of wolf packs. It's a complete fantasy, and you've got to free yourself of it. And if you can't look at every individual man and every individual woman as their own unique personality, if you think that they all fit into some rigid scheme, then you're already living in a world of illusion. If you can't deal with every human being, whatever they are, on their own merits, and you only see their gender, if that's the only way you define them, or you only see women as a whole to conquer, which is unfortunately how crude many of these people seem to think, then you're not living in reality, and you got to wake up from this brainwashing.
I've got a puppy, 6 months, and I go to the dog park for an hour every day. And there's this little shit Chihuahua mix thing that about this big, bossing half the
Hmm.
pack around because it was older and they brought the other dogs in. So the alpha, as you had or as you already know, is actually in general the parents. It's not the
Right.
toughest big. It was just that the guy was like, he thought like that they're obeying it because it's the biggest tough guy. Oh, then it turned out this guy did all this research and no, it was just the mom and the dad were the alphas. It had nothing to do with
Right.
that delusion. So yeah,
Right. No, and again, like using the phrase left hand correctly, if you say alpha, it's been scientifically disproven. There is no such thing as that in nature, and there is no such. Are some men more commanding, more charismatic? Of course they are, and some women are too. But that doesn't mean there's some special high value being or that you can learn to be like them by taking a course with some fucking pimp. You know,
and
that
it's context. The alpha dungeon master when they're all a group of friends in the basement, and then the alpha on the football field. You know, it can be different depending on the context of the social situation. But I guess just to finalize it, you know, we had brought up Tara. We have the mantra, the little challenge if people want to
right.
try it. If not, but
Well,
wasn't she
that would be a
rejected?
way to connect. That would
Hmm.
be a way to connect to the feminine for men who may feel that they have been corrupted by this
Wasn't there a
mind
myth,
wave.
a story of, or was it her? Uh, she had gone and like there, oh, hopefully in your next life you can be reborn as a man, so you can become enlightened. I don't know if that was a different story.
In some schools of Buddhism, it is believed that you need to be a man to become fully enlightened. In Vajrayana, on the contrary, it is considered to be an advantage to be born into a female body. And one thing should be quite obvious, but I think I have to point it out, we have all been men. We have all been women. We have been animals. We have been
Cockroaches.
gods. We have been ghosts. We have been demons. We have been every possible race. So if you hate this race or that race, you have been it. You have been it all. We've been everything. In Tantric Buddhism, it is seen that we have been reborn so many times. Every being we encounter has been our mother at some point.
Hmm.
So, and that's actually even the word lama, which is the translation of guru in Tibetan, has the ma in it, the universal word of the maternal compassion, caring for the child.
And
So
why
that is a
hasn't there ever
strength.
why hasn't there ever been a female Dalai Lama? Is that just because of the monastery? The men had to be.
Well, like every culture, Tibet, despite I mean, look at India. The Kali is worshipped, but women are raped and all
Oh
kinds of
yeah.
sexism. So the huge dichotomy between the religion and the actual practice, Tibet is a very traditional patriarchal system. Women are venerated, and there are so-called dakinis. There are several famous Tibetan Buddhist teachers who are, females who are
Mm,
reincarnated tulkus and that kind of thing. But Yeshit Tsogyal, who was the companion of Padmasambhava, is considered a great embodiment of wisdom. And several tantric schools were founded by women
mm,
yoginis. But Tibet, like every Asian culture, is extremely sexist. And, the Dalai Lama himself has said it would be a good thing if he was reborn as a woman.
mm.
And he jokingly said, as long as I'm pretty, so but he has spoken about it several times.
Oh, that would be
But
amazing.
the hatred and suppression of female sexual power is unfortunately prevalent in almost every culture, including Asian culture, obviously.
Mm. Well, yeah. Any final words regarding all of this, or final thoughts or
Well,
inspirations?
on that regard, as far as the whole misogyny
Mm.
thing, on a practical level, one of the things that I see most prevalent is among these people who accept whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what word to call it. The red pilled incel
Mm.
philosophy is the idea that women should just automatically give of themselves sexually to whoever wants them. I mean, that is such a primitive and crude and insane idea that you need to do something to make yourself desirable. You need to be someone worth knowing. Just by dint of being a male and having a penis does not mean that every woman is obliged to give you what you want. That seems to be the chief delusion
Hmm.
with this thing. Like, why don't these bitches cooperate? I'm a man. They have to do what I want. And again, this comes completely from the three Abrahamic religions and the poison that they have spread through Western culture. So, I mean, that seems like an obvious thing.
Hmm.
We have all been men, we have all been women, we have all been every kind of being. If you hate cockroaches, you have been a cockroach at one point. So we've been everything. So start dealing with beings on their own terms instead of putting them in these little tiny boxes that really have no connection to reality. On a final
Hmm.
note, you know, um, I can only say the most important thing is to cultivate awareness. The most important thing that we can do, even if you don't want to become a Buddhist or really look into Eastern mysticism, everybody can gain. Pay attention to your mind. Pay attention to what you are saying, what you are thinking, and what you are doing with your body. Be conscious of it and cultivate the part of your mind that observes what you are doing, and that will start to help you shake out of this sleepwalking state that we are all born into. So, if I could recommend any spiritual practice that would begin to wake us up from the dream, regardless of your ideology or your beliefs, it would be that. Don't just sleepwalk through life. Activate the part of your mind that observes, what am I thinking? What am I saying? What am I doing? Be conscious of it. And then a secondary benefit of that is that you can then choose actions, words, and thoughts that are karmically auspicious and beneficial rather than follow your worst compulsions, which are usually karmically destructive.
Hmm. Well, thank you once again, and I think you've shared a lot of wisdom and potentially, if people are open to it, maybe at least had them open some new doors. And in the very least, please strongly, if you're into the left-hand path, the Western side, look at the origins of it, the leaders of it, where they ended up, and maybe consider, looking at something that could actually grow you as a human being and help the world as well. So,
And again, don't take our word for it. Go,
no.
these internet conspiracy theorists are always saying, do your own research. Well, read books. There's these things called books. They're not online. You got to read in-depth books about the history of the tantric tradition, and you will see immediately that you are misusing the phrase left-hand path, and there is no postmodern rationalization that you can say blue means yellow. I'm sorry, it's that's not what it means. So read real book. That is the left-hand path. Because I said so, or because it's my idiosyncratic theory, but because it is an absolute truth that can be verified. So,
And thousands of years of tradition that it's based on, and many many teachers that have proven that and weren't into drugs and harming others and things like that. So for me, if anything, if people can just look at it and, like you said, do a little research, it could be something that could help you. So I hope that this interview has helped just a few people, or at least has been interesting to have you ask questions about what you're doing, and even challenge Nikolas, and challenge this channel, and come with your comments and your experiences. So yeah, everyone's greatly appreciated.
well,
And
the final thing, the final thing about that is, your main motivation should be to know what is true, not what you want to be true. And if you can't accept that you make mistakes, that you can be wrong, that you can be misguided, then you're not really an initiate. Your only guiding principle should be what is true and what is not true. And that has to be the flame that pushes your initiation forward. If you're only looking to buttress your own pre-existing prejudices, you're not going to become awakened. So,
well, I had just
on that note, many
I
blessings.
I just want
Many
to thank
blessings
you,
to your
and
listeners.
yeah, to you as well, and to the audience, and thank you for sharing all of this, and and for the mantra, give it a go. Why not? Try it for a month and just see. You might be surprised. I certainly was. And Nikolas, you've helped me a lot. You've helped change my life with just these foundations in meditation and Buddhism that you've shared with me. So I'm grateful, and I hope people, if you have any curiosity, check it out, and any questions, as Nikolas said, feel free to contact him.
Okay, my pleasure to be here. May the light of awareness and awakening shine in the darkness of this Kali Yuga, and in this age of barbarity and ignorance, may wisdom and knowledge arise.
Thank you. See you soon.